it's all about collecting and collecting as much as I can, right? It's just the absolute throw it all against the wall. Don't limit yourself. Just bring in as much as you can. Some of it we know in our head, some of it we have to some of it we have to collect, but that's the first part of it is the collecting. And it's brainstorming, it's researching, and some of it I have to figure out, some of it I know already, but I throw it all down. If I put it into a document, a notepad, whatever it is that I'm doing, all the pieces, I just kind of throw all together. And then I start thinking about the storytelling part of it. It's like, how does this information, how I'm going to tell a story with all this information? How do I start thinking about how this starts to tell a story? And I don't get too in the weeds yet, but I'm starting to think about, as I gathered more and more information, how does this start to tell a story? And then I start to do a little bit of trimming. I don't full on cut too much out yet, but I start to trim out the stuff that doesn't line up with the story that I'm starting to tell. Okay, so that's the collecting phase. The grouping phase for me is starting to organize it. Now I've got a lot of it. I've trimmed a little bit of the fat out of it, but I organize the content. I break it into simple pieces, right? We have people who very low attention spans, and we need to be able to really break it down into bite-sized pieces so people, and then segment or chunk it into major points, and then use subpoints if necessary. So that's tough, right? I mean, one of my greatest lessons I learned in grad school was a line one of my professors said. He said, you can teach enough in a short amount of time if you leave enough out. You can teach anything in a short amount of time if you leave enough out. And there's an art to what is essential in the amount of time you have. If you have 30 minutes, you can only put 30 minutes of information in there, and really probably less than that if you want to be engaging and not just be a monologue, right? A 30-minute session of you just talking the whole time is not very engaging. That's just you talking the whole time. So you wouldn't really want to put 30 minutes of content. You'd have maybe 15 or 20 minutes and have room for people to interact with you. So that's kind of the idea of how do you break it down into those pieces and then subpoints if necessary. The final part is the formatting, right? What tools and how you make it. The fonts, obviously, bigger the better. Colors, contrast, all of that is really big. Using images, icons, backgrounds. There's a little bit of art to all of that, and then being consistent. So it's not every slide is completely different. So I practice that kind of in all of these slides here, right? There's a sense of consistency among all of these. The colors, the fonts, they're all kind of there. I'm big on using all of the space. You can have white space, but try to fill the space also with not too much stuff. Like, here's my 3 big points. Here's one point with 4 subpoints. The second one has 4 subpoints, and this one has 5 subpoints. So I could have put, fonts and colors together on one line and consolidated, but any more than this, it gets to be too much information for people to kind of go through. All right, any questions on that before I jump into some of the tools? We'll get into, I want to give you some creative ways to share this stuff, which I think is what really sets it up.
Yeah, I was going to ask, do you ever have, because let's say your audience isn't engaging. I've mentioned this before, sometimes it's a challenge. So do you ever have like your plan B data or your plan B information that you can say, all right, well, we can just talk about some other things because we have 15, 20 minutes left. Or do you just cut it off?
I'll cut it off. Yeah. So it's happened in GetSetUp, right? I mean, there's been times when we've had a small class or nobody's like talking, which what I love about GetSetUp is that it's live and I can see you and we can talk. And, I always tell learners, I try to tell them, having your camera on is your gift to me so I can know who I'm working with and who, I'm giving you my time and my camera. It's great to see you. And I get some people can, and they got stuff going on. But but when that's not happening, what do you do? I mean, going back to my point, if I had this is a 1-hour class, and if I had 40 minutes of content and nobody's talking, guess what? We're done pretty close in 40 minutes.
Because then I've run into where I didn't have enough time, right? Because it's just, okay.
Yeah, I'm not afraid if we're done, we're done. I don't have to stretch the whole time. It does kind of, I mean, I had a class earlier today that we ran out of time. I mean, it was just like, we went over just because people were talking, and that's good.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, it does depend. I mean, every class that's part of what makes it fun for me is the dynamics of every class being different.
Yeah, definitely is. Yeah. Okay.
Right. But it does make you flex with that for sure. Anybody else on this before we go into some of the tool pieces? All right. there's one of the things I like about this tool I'm using right now is called it's a funny name. I don't know if I have a slide for this. Not that one. All right, this is it here. This is the address to it. It's mmhmm.app. This is it's kind of a control tool. It's a way to kind of manage your content and be able to present it. And the way it works is I have, in Zoom, you can go in and you can pick your camera source. And usually if you just have one webcam, that's the one you pick. I've got a bunch of cameras, so I can pick different ones. But what I get frustrated with Zoom, I love Zoom as the main platform, but I get frustrated as a presenter or the host because the controls of how to switch around different things is a little cumbersome, right? You got to go find my mouse. I got to go click these little, I got to find where that toolbar is. If I've got a lot of stuff on my screen, it could get buried in the back somewhere or lost behind some window. And then I got to hit share screen, and there's different things I can do in there, but it's always kind of tedious. Find your mouse, go to that, click on that, and I don't find that very easy to use. So what I do with Zoom is I select as my camera source, and has a virtual camera basically. And so when I select that, you get whatever I have showing on my platform. And so I'm able to bounce around from slide to slide, and I'm able to move myself around and make myself bigger and smaller and do those kind of things. And even make myself kind of go transparent in the background. So, one thing, Jean Ann, that's kind of neat is if you're presenting a lot of data, like you've got a spreadsheet or a chart or something you're presenting at your meeting, I don't really like how Zoom, when you share a screen, it throws you really small up in the corner. And then the whole screen is your slide, right? It's so slide heavy then that it's just about the slide, and you get kind of reduced to this little thumbnail image in the corner for people when they watch it, right? But you can see, like right now, I'm as big as my slide, and I can kind of take over and say, okay, pay attention to me. Don't pay attention to my slide. I'm just, make myself larger and more in front and take over. And I think that's what keeps it more engaging, right? Because it's people connecting with people, people talking to people. And I think that's part of it that helps me on that. The other, in here, I could put myself in a, turn the slide off. I can go, my room shot, I can go in a circle. I can make my circle bigger and smaller. And even as I move around, it tracks around with me. So if you were like standing up, it would track around with you, which is kind of